Alright, anime game fans, listen up. If you thought Anime Defenders was the king of the hill, think again, because Anime Vanguards is here, and it's bringing some serious heat. This game takes the familiar visuals and mechanics you love, but cranks it up a notch with some clever improvements. The biggest game changer? Every unit has a passive ability, which adds a whole new layer of strategy. That means no more just picking the strongest character. You gotta think about how their passive skills work together. And let me tell you, that made ranking these units way harder than expected. So today, we're diving into the ultimate Anime Vanguards unit tier list. Some characters are absolute monsters on the battlefield, while others, well, let's just say they won't be carrying your team anytime soon. Whether you're looking for the best damage dealers, support units, or just the most fun characters to use, I've got you covered. So sit back, grab your favorite snack, and let's break down the best and worst units in Anime Vanguards. I'm quickly moving on to the video, and I'm ranking units in Anime Vanguards. Before we start, if you enjoy these types of list videos, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Enjoy watching. The units in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Gari, Luffo, Naruto, Roku, Rukio, Shinzi, Sosuke, and Mimi Psychic. Alright, let's dive into the world of Anime Vanguard and talk about the ones you definitely don't want in your lineup. If you've ever pulled a unit and thought, why did I get this? Chances are you've encountered one of the infamous D-tier units. These guys are the ones that really make you question your luck. No matter how hard you try, they just don't cut it. Let's be real, even the rarities don't matter here because these units are a major letdown. Mimi Psychic, Gari, Luffo, Naruto, you name it, they're all part of this underwhelming crew. They just don't bring enough value to the table to make them worth any serious investment. And trust me, no amount of grinding is going to make them the powerhouse you're hoping for. Roku, Rukio, and Shinzi? Yeah, same story. You could spend hours farming, but the reality is there are far better alternatives out there. You could literally get a decent unit from just a few summons, so why waste your time? Sosuke, to wrap it up, is in that same unfortunate boat. These units just don't have the tools to keep up with the competition. Even if you're a beginner and trying to build up your roster, there are much more useful picks that will make your game experience smoother and way more fun. Save yourself the headache and keep your eyes on the units that actually bring the heat, because these D-tier guys, they're best left out of your plans. The units in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Genas, Genitsu, Inosake, Kokashi, Picleo, Karem Chilled, Okarun Turbo, Zion Berdelion, Psycho Spirit Medium, and Puini Boxer. Alright, buckle up because we're about to dive into the C-tier units of Anime Vanguard, and trust me, these units might not be top tier, but they've got some serious character. They can still get the job done if you play your cards right, but there's always a bit of extra strategy needed to make them shine. Let's take a look at what these units bring to the table and where they fall short. First up, we have Karem Chilled. He's like that one friend who has all the cool moves but needs a little help to really be effective. Karem's got some solid crowd control with his freeze and DOT effects, which is great for slowing down enemies. However, here's the catch. Those effects don't trigger unless the enemies are burned first. So, if you're not setting up those burn conditions, Karem's abilities are kinda dead in the water. He's a bit of a one-trick pony, but if you can pull off that burn, he's a powerhouse. Now, moving on to Okarun Turbo, a unit that brings a massive damage boost thanks to his turbo transformation. Sounds amazing, right? Well, the problem is, his SPA penalties are so harsh that it's like trying to fire a machine gun with a jammed trigger. His attack speed takes a big hit, so while his damage output can be incredible, you're gonna have to work around those penalties. Plus, he can't really boost damage reduction without hitting multiple attacks, so his performance might be a little inconsistent. Next, we've got Zion Berdelion. This guy's all about burn damage. He consistently applies it, making his overall DPS a real treat. But here's the issue. His effectiveness relies heavily on the enemies staying burned. If they're not, you're not getting that sweet damage bonus, and that can leave you in a tough spot, especially against tougher opponents that can shrug off the burn effect. He's good, but just make sure the conditions are right before you invest too much in him. Then there's Psycho Spirit Medium, who's a boss killer at heart. If you've got a big boss fight coming up, Psycho is your go-to with his bonus damage against bosses. The only problem? That damage boost is only for bosses, so he's kind of useless against regular mobs. Also, applying burns to enemies slows down his SPA. making him a little sluggish in the process. But when he hits, he really hits hard. Just make sure you're facing a boss when you use him. Let's talk about Puini Boxer now. Puini's got this ability to stack damage over time with each hit, which sounds fantastic in theory. But the reality is, those SPA drops are a real pain, constantly slowing him down and messing with his DPS. The trick with Puini is to keep attacking and stacking up that damage, but if you can't maintain that pace, he's gonna struggle. He's got potential, but only if you can manage his attack speed effectively. Now let's take a look at Genis. He's another one who specializes in burn damage, giving him consistent DPS over time. The problem is, like the others in this tier, he suffers from the dreaded SPA reduction, which hinders his overall performance. If his attack speed drops, so does his damage output. He's reliable, sure, but he needs those attack speeds to stay strong, or he'll fall behind. Zenitsu is next, and he's got an interesting ability. He can unleash explosive burst damage every 8th hit. The catch? His overall stats aren't exactly amazing, so his performance can feel a little average. You're better off finding someone with more consistent damage, but if you can time those bursts, he can still pack a punch. The real question is, why would you take him when there are better epic units around? Finally, there's Inosake, who's all about getting that damage boost and SPA reduction after kills. Sounds awesome, right? Well, the thing is, those boosts are delayed until you rack up enough kills, so you're left waiting for the payoff. And his bleed effect? Not great against fast-moving enemies, making him a bit less reliable in certain situations. Still, if you're patient and can get those kills, he can definitely turn the tide. So, there you have it. The C-tier units in Anime Vanguard. These guys aren't the worst of the worst, but they sure require some finesse to make them work. Whether you're stacking damage, waiting for a kill, or managing burn conditions, each one has their ups and downs. They're definitely worth considering, but only if you're ready to work around their weaknesses. The units in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Alligator, Agony, Bean, Blossom, Goi, Grim Wow, Itochi, Kinaru, Kinua, Nazuka, Inamuki, Dodara Explosive, Johnny Infinite Spin, Ishtar Divinity, Medea Witch of Betrayal, Jiro Ball Breaker, Valentine Love Train. Alright, let's get into it. Today, we're diving into the wild world of Anime Vanguard, where the units range from OP gods to a bit more underwhelming ones. But hey, we're focusing on the B-tier units today. They're not bad by any means, but they don't quite rise to the top. Think of them like that friend who's always good for a backup but never quite steals the spotlight. So let's break down what makes these units tick and where they might surprise you. First up, we have Valentine Love Train. This one's a bit of a slow burn. It starts off pretty chill, but as you stack hits, it steadily ramps up its damage and range. Plus, immunity to status ailments is a game changer. The downside? It takes a fair amount of hits to hit its peak. So, don't expect it to be your heavy hitter out the gate. Next, let's talk about Dodara Explosive. Now this unit has one of the most consistent CCs in the game, stunning enemies every single time it lands a hit. And if you can chain those stuns, the damage keeps creeping up. But there's a catch. After using its special ability, it self-stuns for a bit, which can really mess with your rhythm. So, use that special wisely. Then we've got Johnny Infinite Spin, the mythic unit that's all about building up DPS and SPA as you go. It starts slow, but once you activate that infinite spin, it's a damage party. The downside? Early on, the SPA reduction makes Johnny's performance a little sluggish. It's like waiting for the kettle to boil. Once it's hot, though, it's unstoppable. Ishtar Divinity is next, and while it's a mythic unit, it does depend heavily on the placement of your other Fate units to really shine. It has the potential for massive AoE damage, especially when paired with the right allies. And the incremental damage boosts with every attack? That's just icing on the cake. But if you don't set it up right, it can feel like a wasted opportunity. Moving on to Medea Witch of Betrayal, this one deals extra damage when enemies are nullified, which is perfect for clearing out tough formations. However, the SPA reduction with each attack is a bit of a bummer. It starts strong, but you'll need to plan around its limitations to keep it performing at its peak. If you like AoE and crowd control, then Jiro Ball Breaker is right up your alley. This unit delivers solid damage over time with those steel ball drops and offers good crowd control by reducing enemy status duration. But here's the kicker. It really needs those upgrades to get going. So, you'll want to invest in leveling it up for it to be at its best. Let's talk about Alligator. As an epic unit, it's fantastic for slowing down enemies. Think 50% less movement for 3 seconds. The crowd control is solid, but let's be real, it lacks punch in the damage department. If you're looking for someone to dish out some serious hurt, Alligator might not be your best bet. Lastly, we have Agony. This legendary unit brings the heat with its knockback ability and can boost its damage and range after knocking enemies. But, and it's a big but, its effects are temporary. It's like a quick burst of energy. Great for a little bit, but not a long-term solution. You'll need to trigger that knockback often to keep things flowing. So there you have it. The B-tier units of Anime Vanguard aren't bad at all. They've got their quirks and can definitely hold their own if used right. Just remember, they aren't going to carry the team on their own. You'll need to pair them up with some A-tier or S-tier units to really shine. Happy strategizing! The units in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Akazo, Cha-In, Igros, Tengon, Naruto Six Tails, Obita Awakened, Roku Dark, Rengoku, Sosuke Hibi, Vogeta Super Awakened, Itadori, Mohato, Sukono, Emi Ice Witch, Gilgamesh King of Heroes, Medusa Gorgon, Lilia and Berserker, and Foboko Hellish. Alright, let's dive into the A-tier units in Anime Vanguard. These units are not just your average fighters, they're the true heavy hitters of the game, with some seriously cool abilities and potential. If you want to dominate the battlefield, you'll definitely want to get familiar with these guys. But hey, not all of them are perfect. They each have their little quirks, and we're here to break it all down. First up, we've got Igros Elite Knight. And trust me, this one is a beast. With massive AoE damage that'll wipe out entire groups of enemies, Igros excels in both offense and defense. He's the guy who'll deal with waves of enemies without breaking a sweat, while also holding his ground when things get rough. If you're looking for a well-rounded unit that does it all, Igros is a solid pick. Now, Akazo Destructive is one tough cookie. This mythical unit's immune to all those pesky status effects, which means he can keep attacking non-stop without being slowed down. If you've got a boss to take down, Akazo's your guy. Consistent single-target damage and no interruptions, making him a real MVP when it comes to boss battles. Next, let's talk about Cha-In Blade Dancer. She's got some serious burst potential. With a boosted critical hit chance, her single-target damage is insane. And the best part? Her low cooldown means you'll be pumping out those attacks fast and often, making her one of the most consistent DPS units in the A-tier. If you need someone who'll deal massive damage in a short burst, Cha-In's the dancer you want on your team. On the flip side, we've got Tengon Flashiness. Now this unit's all about control. Not only does he dish out multi-target attacks, but he also boosts the attack speed, so you can stack up that damage quickly. He's all about team synergy, helping your squad pump out the damage in no time. If you're looking to enhance your team's DPS across the board, Tengon's a great choice. Then there's Rengoku Purgatory. The guy's got a burn effect that doubles damage. Talk about a spicy burn! His sustained DPS makes him fantastic against waves of enemies, and he'll also do solid work wearing down those tough bosses over time. Just be ready for some extended battles because Rengoku shines when the fight drags on. Naruto Six Tails is a bit of a mixed bag though. While he has solid base stats and stacks up his damage with each hit, he's outclassed by some of the superior mythic units in the game. But hey, if you're looking for a reliable, solid unit for early or mid-game, Naruto still holds his ground, even if he's not the top pick in the long run. Speaking of burn damage, Obita Awakened brings some high-tier performance with his reliable burn infliction. But here's the kicker. When you unlock those top-tier S units, Obita starts to fall behind. Still, if you need a solid unit for prolonged battles, Obita's got your back with some serious damage output. And finally, Sosuke Hebi. This guy's a DPS machine if you can keep those attack chains going. His damage output stacks up as he continuously attacks, so he's pretty versatile and can work in a bunch of different setups. But if you're not able to maintain that uninterrupted flow of attacks, he'll definitely lose some steam. Keep the chain going, and Sosuke will be your powerhouse. So there you have it, the A-tier units that can seriously help you out in Anime Vanguard. They each bring something unique to the table, whether it's big AoE damage, consistent DPS, or crowd control. You'll want to consider your playstyle and team composition before picking your favorites. The A-tier units might not always be the absolute best, but they're definitely top tier when it comes to what they bring to the fight. The units in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Alucard Vampire King, Haruka Rin Dancer, Song Jinwoo Monarch, Sosuke Storm, Sprint Wagon, Todo Unleashed, Jag-O Volcanic, Tuji Sorcerer Killer, Julius Eyesplosion, Mechamar, Legendary Super Brolzy, Rogita Super 4, Regna Rage, Is Dead Romantic, Ram and Ran Fanatic, Gujo Infinity, Saber Black Tyrant, Chaso Blood Curse, Soburo Contract, Diogo Alternate, and Divalo Requiem. Alright, let's talk about the absolute beastly units you'll want to have in your Anime Vanguard roster. We're diving straight into the S tier, where the real powerhouses live. These units will carry you through even the most insane battles, but be warned, they're not for the faint of heart. Let's jump into the fun and check out some of these top-tier units that are sure to make you feel like a true legend in the game. First up, we have Alucard Vampire King. This guy is a literal powerhouse when it comes to long-term damage. His high bleed damage over time is a killer, especially when you pair him up with other debuffing units. The longer the battle drags on, the more dangerous Alucard becomes, making him an excellent choice for those longer fights where you need that sustained DPS. Next, let's talk about Divalo Requiem. This unit is pure chaos against bosses. His damage output skyrockets when bosses are on the field, and he gets even stronger when enemies are slowed. Plus, he's got guaranteed dodges, making him nearly impossible to hit. After using his ability, all enemies on the map are slowed. It's like he just pressed the slow-mo button on the entire game. Divalo is just the type of character you want to have in your team when dealing with heavy-hitting bosses. If you love controlling the battlefield from a distance, Haruka Rin Dancer is your go-to unit. Her exceptional long-range capabilities make her a great early game pick, as she can engage enemies before they even get close to your towers. Plus, her support abilities really shine when she's working with other units, so she's a fantastic addition to any team that relies on synergy. Let's not forget Sosuke Storm, who is basically the king of crowd control. This guy stuns enemies, making it much easier to disrupt their movements and mess up enemy formations. His debuffs are crucial for controlling the crowd, and he works wonders when paired with other DPS units that need a little breathing room to do their thing. Then we've got Diogo Alternate, a consistent DPS machine. He excels at targeting high-value enemies, like those big bosses or the dangerous mobs that tend to sneak through your defenses. On top of that, he provides bonus damage against bosses, making him a great pick when you need someone who's going to focus on the big bad guys. Soburo Contract is another unit that just screams support. Not only does he buff your allied units for increased damage, but he also boosts the range of nearby towers. This means more firepower, more damage, and a stronger overall defense, which makes him invaluable when you're stacking your team for a full-blown assault. Chaso Blood Curse is the debuffing nightmare that every enemy fears. His strong bleed effects ensure that enemies feel the pain for a long time, and he excels in crowd control while reducing mob effectiveness. This makes him a perfect pick for clearing out large groups of enemies or dealing with tough bosses, especially when you need to keep the pressure up. Lastly, we've got Saber Black Tyrant. This guy is the ultimate boss wave controller. He creates an aura that slows down enemies' progress, while simultaneously boosting allied damage. With his passive effects and ability to control boss waves, Saber is an absolute must-have when facing off against those big, dangerous bosses that just keep coming. So, there you have it. These S-tier units in Anime Vanguard are truly something else. They offer incredible versatility, massive damage, and support abilities that will keep you one step ahead of your enemies. If you manage to get these units in your lineup, you're going to feel like you can take on the world. The video ends here. See you in another video. Don't forget to subscribe.